had an outstanding article about drone justice, and we're going to get into this, but we'll, I guess, bring them up to date on the current stuff. And this is something that just happened with the drone war whistleblower, Daniel Hale. Is that his name?
Yes, that's his name. Daniel Hale served 4 years in the Air Force. He went on to serve in work for the NSA and then the Geospatial Agency, and that's where the agency that participates in the drone program that the United States runs. That it basically goes after these terrorist targeted killings and assassinations, and. This was way back when, as you said, I wrote the report back in 2015, and this is when the Obama administration they have been going after any kind of whistleblower out there because they didn't want, I guess, the world or even Americans to know what was actually happening under the helm of the CIA, actually, who's directing this. And fast forward to today, Daniel Hale is in prison. He's sitting out here in Alexandria waiting to be sentenced. He had released information. He released 8 top secret documents to The Intercept, and that's Glenn Greenwald's outfit. And so they originally tried to charge him with several counts. He has just a public defender, so he doesn't have a high-powered attorney. And he's pled guilty to 1 count, hoping that he'll get somewhere around the 5-year mark in prison. And he's been.
The thing he pled guilty to, espionage act.
Yeah, he's not a spy.
1917.
Yeah, they're treating him as a spy.
In stone, did they use a hammer and chisel to write that one back in 1917?
Or the hammer and the iron and the sickle? Yeah. No, I mean they're going after this because when they use this espionage, this count of espionage, okay, automatically Americans think, oh my God, that's a traitor to the country. So what better way to go after? This is what they've gone after Edward Snowden. This is what they've gone after with Julian Assange, who's not even an American citizen, doesn't live in America, has never lived in America. This is the charge that they go after these people because they can get them. I mean, if you take it further, like the Rosenbergs, I mean, you can get the death penalty for stuff like this. So it's a way to put these people up there and have mainstream media cover the story as these people are actually spies handing information off to the Russians or the Chinese, which didn't happen. And this all came about when Daniel was part of the drone program, and he was targeting and he was tasked with targeting a particular individual, and he said that that there was a child down there, and the person, his supervisor said, I don't care, fire away. And he's like, no, that's a child. And then the supervisor came back and said, no, it's a goat. And he's like, no, that's a child. I'm not going to kill a child. And so he didn't. And so then, here, fast forward to today, where he, is now paying the price for not following a direct order, but, also for, being so emotionally distraught over this that he went to the media and said, look, Americans need to know what their country is doing. And when you compare what he did in giving 8 documents to, say, Hillary Clinton, who had entire private servers that were sitting in a basement somewhere in Colorado and nothing happened to her. Or we can compare it to on Friday, where the defense contractor Honeywell actually gave the Chinese, they said mistakenly, but they gave the Chinese all of these drawings of future aircraft that were manufacturing, and they got a fine.
Yeah, hold it right there, Kimberly. And by the way, the Senate seat's coming up in July, Mr. Hale. We'll continue in just a moment. More from Kimberly Dvorak discussing the drone war. And I wanted to tell you that in Kimberly's report, because this is really important, reason that Hale cited for pleading guilty is because the Espionage Act charges prevents a public interest defense. And in other words, is government was more important than his obligation not to disclose classified information to anyone.
Yeah. Two things on this. This is exactly what happened with Edward Snowden. And he said that he would come back, he would even face jail time, and he was not worried about that. But he wanted to have a trial where the public would get to see what the United States government was doing under the guise of, I guess, extrajudicial diplomacy, let's put it that way. So we look at that thing. And the second piece here, the component is, the reason we have whistleblowers in this country is just because it may be national security related, if this is a crime, it's a crime. And some of these crimes that U.S. government is committing are actually war crimes. And we saw with the Obama administration, they actually, stepped up, and President Obama stepped into this role as president, and he was, one of the guys that was like in there planning, getting the research on these terrorists and putting them on the list and who was the first target, and he took great delight in this. And these are reports from the very friendly New York Times to Barack Obama saying that he took great delight in these preparations, looked forward to Terror Tuesdays when he got to pick who would live and who would die.
Yeah, listener, and does it remind you now, does it come back to you, that phrase, Terror Tuesday? I remember, some people are kind of laughing about it.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's the day he goes in the room, into the room, and he says, yeah, let's push the button, and let's fire a drone here, and one here, and one here, and one. What about the people around him? What about how many people are in the house? No, just get that guy, or lady, or whatever.
Yeah, it's like Linda. It's like, but it's like.
It was a Democrat in office.
Yeah, it's no big deal. But you have to also, too, this kind of, likens back to the Vietnam era where Lyndon B. Johnson was, in the planning room trying to say, well, here's where we're going to target and this is where we need to, drop some bombs and all of that with no experience and just, overriding what the generals were telling him to do. So, it's not new for the Democrats to do this. And I think, the Republicans and, because of Bush kind of pushed them that direction, they became the more warmongering party, if you will. But we have to remember that it's primarily and traditionally the Democrats who are interventionists when it comes to things of this nature. And with the drone war, it's you aren't capturing your victims. You're killing them. You're not giving them any due process. And one thing that should also be pretty concerning is this is different. If this is on a battlefield and you're in the middle of Afghanistan, which we went to war with and we declared war with, that's one thing. But to be dropping bombs and assassinating people in countries like Pakistan, Somalia, Iraq, and name any number of countries that we're dropping bombs in, we're not at war with those countries. And just think how we would feel. And I know that, at the end of this article that we discussed on your show back in 2015, I ended with, the Mexican government was looking for El Chapo, and sure enough, he was at a wedding party just across the border in San Diego, and then ... You guys can fill in the blanks here. I mean, are we going to be okay if the Mexican government drops, a couple of bombs because, that was a good target for them. They really needed to get him. Unfortunately, it wiped out half the wedding party in San Diego. I mean, these are the things that in the future we're going to have to be looking at. And you have to know that terrorists, now they don't need to get these nuclear bombs. Now they can get themselves, a high-powered drone, and they can, create a whole bunch of havoc. Just think if they put fentanyl in it, for instance, and they just sprinkled it all over town. I mean, people would die. These are things that, we have to be careful about doing. And if it's on a battlefield, then yes, we have the ability to do this, and that's the, law of war in this case. But for most of these cases, we're not even at war with these countries, and we're dropping bombs on them.
There's no human consideration or passion.
No.
Because you mentioned that Hale, and they were pretty sure it was Hale in an interview with The Intercept, October 15, 2015, and how he talked about outrageous explosions of watch listing, of monitoring people and racking and stacking them on a list, then assigning them numbers, assigning them baseball cards, assigning them death sentences without notice on a worldwide battlefield.
Well, this is, I mean, and when we get into like the war crime stuff, and we know that President Bush was, they consider him a war criminal as well. Well, I mean, you have to look at, President Obama, throw him in there because he's doing that, and he's like taking them up a notch. And with the fact that he went after U.S. citizens, deprived them of their Fifth Amendment right, and killed them in a country, Yemen, that we were not at war with. And then 2 weeks later, his son that was 15, 16 years old, who flew over to Yemen to see if he could try to get his dad to turn himself in because he was on the terror watch list, and there's only one way to get off that terror watch list, and that's to be killed. And his parents and pleaded, the ACLU pleaded with the Obama administration to stop, get him off this terror watch list. But his son went over when he didn't hear, and then Obama had no problem taking out and killing his son, who's a minor. And then Secretary or National Security Director for Obama, Donlin, he came out and said that, we had a Justice Department legal counsel. They prepared a lengthy memo saying it's okay for us to kill him and his son and another American citizen, by the way. And that, then his chief of staff said this was an easy one, to kill American citizens and to kill a minor, not capture. And as we hear with Daniel Hale here, he said that they say kill or capture, but that's just kind of like to kind of put people's mind at ease. There's no capturing going on. And if we're not capturing people, now we're not getting that human intel that we really need to get, so we can actually fight smartly instead of just trying to kill everybody anywhere. And and all this is doing is causing civil wars in other countries. Our country's up in arms about it, and it costs trillions and trillions of dollars. And the American people need to do this. And people like Daniel Hale, who comes out and stood up and said, I'm not going to kill a kid on whether it's a battlefield or not a battlefield. I am not going to be responsible for that. And then comes out and releases 8 documents to the Intercept and said, look, here's basically what's going on with these drone wars. Before all this, we didn't even have it. We didn't, the government completely denied that a drone program even existed, although it was a joke because we all knew there was one, but the government never actually came out and, said, yeah, okay, we did that. Yeah, we did have that. But, now there's, solid proof about this and what's taking place and the abuses that are taking place on top of that. And I think, as with, these endless wars that we're in, the American public would just like to have a very public dialogue on that. And the fact that the U.S. government wants to prevent Daniel Hale from having his day in court and just wants him to go to prison, and that way, the next whistleblower that comes along, will not come out because they see how they've been treated, like the John Kiriakus and like the Edward Snowdens. Edward Snowden's a man without a country. Literally, he has no country. He has no passport.
I'll tell you, you hit it right on the head here when you wonder, when are they going to have their day in court? And Kimberly reminds you that the United States government's policy of punishing people who provide journalists with information in the public interest is a profound threat to free speech, free press, and a healthy democracy. Hey, let me ask you, did Trump also follow into this?
But he did. Yeah, I mean, he did drone strikes.
I know he had that big bomb blaster.
Yeah, he did. But he did drone strikes, and of course, this has all been moved from the Pentagon over to the CIA. So now it's top secret, and it's very difficult to get any information about these programs. So the Obama administration tried to have a list that so that we would know how many people, civilians, were collateral damage in these attacks, and the estimates were always abysmally low. And then now fast forward to the Biden administration, they're increasing the drone strikes, and they're not releasing any of the data on this. So, but yes, Trump did use the. I mean, most presidents do use this. I haven't heard, and I didn't hear any of my colleagues, talking about the president taking great joy in assassinating people on a battlefield. and what that does to the people in that little community where these people lived. Again, the collateral damage, unacceptable. These are war crimes, and for the American for an American president to take joy, and it was an easy one, to kill 3 Americans in Yemen. Again, that those are Americans. They have different stipulations because they're American citizens. They do have the Constitution applies to them as well, and they were not in the act of committing terrorism either. They were just driving in a car, and then the teenage son was killed while eating lunch at a restaurant. So of course there was other collateral damage. The report came out saying that only 2 other people were killed. Well, it was a busy cafe, and the Yemenis say there were many more than just the 2 that were killed there. So this is the government trying to operate outside the lines. And again, these are things that the American public has a right to know, should know, and we need to have a healthy discussion as to where we want to go and where we want to move forward as a country. The endless wars are not popular. So if we're going to end these endless wars and get out of them, let's also take a look at some of these other programs that we're using. And if we get out of the endless wars, are we going to ramp up drone strikes and killing people and the collateral damage? And then again, on top of that, they're not getting that human intel. So they're not getting that human intelligence that's going to tell them what their plans are in the future for terrorist attacks or whatnot. And again, these people are all in the Middle East. And I say this, and I know people sometimes laugh. I laugh. I'm like, it's a really big ocean. The Atlantic's pretty big. It's really difficult for them. They got to be strong swimmers if they're going to make it over here. If we've got strong borders and we know who's coming in and out of our country through all of our ports of entry, we don't need to be fighting anybody in the Middle East, because that's Europe's problem, that's Russia's problem, that's India's problem. That's not our problem, and we should be spending those $6, $7, $8 trillion that we've wasted over there in this country, and perhaps helping Mexico and Central America, and maybe making this part of the world a little nicer place for people in those countries to live.
I mentioned earlier that Kimberly did a report in 2015, April 26th, and you say the U.S. government has been ineffective in the war on terror. And I want you to listen to this, listener, when you think about 2 or 3 people being killed accidentally by a drone attack. Despite the hundreds of billions spent on electronic surveillance that has killed an estimated 3,800 non-combatants and daily infringes on American civil liberties. 3,800 people that weren't even, holding rifles or anything else. If you hold a hostage.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say at that point, I mean, and these are families, and granted, probably there's probably a terrorist or 2 within the bunch there, but they are known to have their families stay with them. But if we know precisely where they are, then there's an argument to be made that maybe we send in our special forces to actually try to capture them. And if we don't end up capturing, they try to run, then the collateral damage is going to be lessened because you're not dropping a bomb. And you have people like Dianne Feinstein out there saying, yeah, these drones are a great thing, it's so precise. Well, yeah, it takes out the entire mud hut. I mean, and there's not usually one person in there, there's multiple people. But to see these people just, take such, just look at these and not have any kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, we're actually doing this. No, looking at and reflecting on what they're endorsing and what they're sanctioning. So, these things are, these are things that this country really needs to take a hard look at.
And you can watch movies, where you can get together a group of military people that are going to go in and rescue somebody. Makes great movies, right?
Yeah.
In her article from 2015, she talks about Duncan Hunter, Republican California congressman, Marine Reserve, served in the Iraqi War, and he released a scathing statement regarding the death of an American, Dr. Warren Weinstein. Now, he just happened to be held hostage by Al-Qaeda, and so they said, well, we got to kill the bad guys, and Well, Dr. Weinstein's right in the middle of the circle.
Yeah.
You know, and instead of doing the old, the SEAL team approach or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I mean, and these are, I mean, and we also know that Miss Mueller, who was the gal from Arizona, who was also kidnapped in Syria, and she was held hostage, and then under the Trump administration, she was, taken out by a drone strike again. So, you look at, there's lots of innocent collateral damage going on with this. I mean, obviously.
Hold it
Okay.
right there, and let's get back to more of the innocent people being slaughtered by the, I guess let's say the Americans. Boy, I hate to have to put it that way, I know.
Yeah.
Kimberly Dvorak, Senior Foreign Policy Advisor for the Committee for Responsible Foreign Policy, and I'm going to tell you something in that 2015 article. 2015, there was a guy that, the Democrats didn't like, especially, and his name was General Michael Flynn. And Kelly has this quote from him. This is in 2015. And he stated with conviction that when it comes to the U.S. schizophrenic foreign policy, we should stop, take a deep breath, step back, and look at everything that's going on. You think they thought, don't say drones, don't talk about the drones, come on now, we'll get you, don't lie to the FBI.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I'd also kind of like to, finish up with this as well. Now, back in 2015, I wrote about this, and, we were just discussing that, what happens when the bad guys start getting these drones. Of course, they're going to start using them against Americans, and they're going to try to hit us on our homeland. Well, back in 2015, the Chief Executive Officer for Northrop, Wesley Bush, said that the export restrictions are hurting the industry in America and not making us safer. He also finished saying the U.S. is struggling to sell these unmanned aircraft to our allies while other nations prepare to jump to the marketplace with both feet. So after that, Northrop Grumman goes to K Street, does a whole bunch of lobbying, so they loosen the restrictions on these drone sales. So you've got, the defense industry is also pushing this because it makes it, seem like it's an easier war. You're not losing, 100,000 men, like all marching into Normandy and that type of thing. And this is a little more quiet, I guess. But, you have these defense contractors like Northrop Grumman crossing the line and advocating for the use of this stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, another person you mentioned 2015, I hate to see his name pop up anytime.
Yeah.
Democrat Ranking House Intelligence Committee member Alan Schiff. Little Alan Schiff, Russia. Well, he was less critical of the president's signature program and said there should be serious ramifications if the drone counterterrorism operations were altered.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but
Intelligence.
Yeah.
Did he ever get on the intelligence?
I don't know how he got on that thing anyways. But, at the end of the day, when we're looking at all this information as journalists, we try to get out there and get this out to the public. Obviously, I've written several stories on the drone program over the, last several years. First one dating back to 2013. So, with someone like, Daniel Hale, 33 years old, he's sitting in jail here waiting for a sentencing on July 13th. He needs to hear from people out there. Americans, I think, are very concerned about these programs, and I think it would make it a lot easier if more journalists were able to open up and say, let's start talking and tackling these tough topics, because America is a great country. America is not a racist country, but when we do things like this drone program, that hurts our international reputation. Not President Trump, not certain ideological people that the left don't agree with. You know what it is? I mean, programs like this hurt our own credibility overseas. And when the UN steps in and says, we need to shed a lot more sunlight on it, then maybe we ought to listen to that. And again, these endless wars, we've been there for nearly 20 years. They haven't worked, and maybe we ought to step back. And as General Flynn wisely said back then, we need to step back. We need to look at this, and we need to take our take stock of what we're doing and make sure we're doing the right thing in the first place.
Well, Kimberly, all out of time. Excellent report, Kimberly Dvorak, and check out her website, the KD Report, KD, thekdreport.com. We'll do it again.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.